My name is Thomas Steenbergen. I run the Open Source Program Office at EPAM. Just to show and find, how many people are familiar when I talk about Open Source Program Office, what it is? Not so many. So an Open Source Program Office is your knowledge center in an organization regarding to open source. As you can see here, I'm involved in a lot of projects. I sometimes actually get asked, like, do I work for the Linux Foundation? Because all of these are Linux Foundation projects. Almost, actually, the Bitkom not. No, I just have an awesome company that actually understands open source. And we figured out how I can do all of these contributions and do all of this open source. But it will become clear why I'm involved with all of this stuff. This is a very pretty picture of the first compliance workflow that I up. Actually, the first version was actually on a beer napkin in a beer garden. If you ever come to Berlin, give me a ping. I know some nice beer gardens where you have some beer. So this is the pretty up version of how a workflow normally looks like, where you start with a code change, then you have the scanner, and there's okay, not okay, and if it's okay, you can release, and you have your SBOMs, you have all of those things. If it's not okay, you have to usually do curation. So you have to do either license curation or security curation, and then you fix things up. So they're very simple workflow. And of course, then I looked at okay, I need to get some tool. And of course, my friendly sales rep from my SDN vendor says, yeah, sure, don't worry, we can all automate that. But I'm an open source guy, a long-term open source guy. And nowadays, we all talk about supply chain security. I already realized, if I, as an open source guy, buy proprietary software to do open source reviews, this doesn't really sit right with me. We should really do something else, especially since we have all this history. But if you think about it, right? My open source challenges that I have in my organization are probably not many different than what you have. I might have some internal politics that's different than yours, but it doesn't matter. What we really should be doing is basically collaborate together and try to fix things upstream. That said, I don't know if people are familiar with this blog post. It's actually a very nice one. It's from an open source maintainer, and I very much agree with him because I am also an open source maintainer. Look up the list. It's Jean-Pierre, and basically he makes the argument validly, like, hey, I'm a maintainer. I give out things for free, but my license has a good statement that says it's as is, a big disclaimer. It's like, hey, I give the code for free. Don't come back to me if there's anything wrong with it. I'm giving you stuff for free. This is the same that I'm putting here 20 free pizzas on this desk. And one of you eats the pizza and they get sick, they get food poisoning. Doesn't mean that I'm responsible. No, I have been baking my ass off. I'm baking 20 pizzas right here, all for free. And I'm giving them away for free. I'm an open source maintainer. So just a friendly message, and I'm a maintainer myself. I really work day and night till 2, 4 a.m. at night to help out my users. I'm generally a very friendly guy. But don't treat us as a vendor, please. Treat us as a maintainer, as somebody that's your friend, and treat them with the same respect you pay to your friends, or as my other friend always says, treat it with the same respect as you would treat your mother. So my question as an OSPO, actually, where I was looking at, okay, I need to do things at scale, at speed. For the people that don't know EPAM, we have 55,000 software engineers. So we have everything under the sun. We need to do things safe. We want to respect licenses, and we also want to do sustainability. It's not fine that we just consume. If we don't do things sustainable, basically, these projects upstream that we rely on die. And then we have a problem. So, and of course, whilst we're all doing this, I need to keep my devs happy, right? I cannot put something that will make the lawyers very happy, will make my security guys very happy, but my devs will be crying. So, years back, before we had all of this fancy things, this back in 2015, I came up with a plan. It's like, I want to do more open source. I'm just gonna, since I'm a long time in the OSPO stock, I'm just gonna build open source tooling that's gonna address the challenges of OSPOs. Then I'm gonna open source it. Then I'm gonna collaborate with all of these OSPOs, which generally are big companies. They have money and they have resources, so they can improve this tooling because it actually solves problems. Again, it's a users building tools for users. And then we're going to add other stuff like security, inner source, coming out, and all the other stuff. And then once we have done this, basically this whole security compliance stuff, this is normally a lead blow for OSPOs. It's like, oh, crap. So usually what a lot of OSPOs get stuck into, well, I make this easier for all of the OSPOs out there. So what do they then have more time for? For contributing back. And if they all contribute back, they use all of those resources, they can help make projects more sustainable. And then we have this vicious cycle. The more they contribute back, the more everything goes better. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a good plan. So it's not my 2030 plan. I did this back in 2015. So my goal actually, when I was looking at this, we were building, I was like, we can build a tooling in 2 years. We should be done in another 5 years. And at least it will solve the whole problem. It will make the bigger better. Yeah, that was 2015. It was a little bit naive. So this also explains, I now listed all of the projects that I'm kind of involved in. I had to fix things all over the place. From really like, oh, hang on, I need to know how to basically do contributions at scale. Let me go to the do. I used to work for a company that was in the automotive side. I need to have an exchange mechanism. Before it was even called SBOMs, I was involved in SPDX, now it's all held SBOMs. Then I was like, I need to fix things inside my organization. I need to teach my organization about how to use open source. Now we go inner source. And more recently, when we had the founding of OpenSSF, now I'm also involved in OpenSF, of course, because I was doing all the other things. So if people have any questions about SPDX, CycloneDX, or VEX, I'm involved with a lot of those things. And finally, which is where I actually thought the gap was the tooling. So what OSPOs need is something that addresses their problem. It's nice that we have all of these little tools out there, but what they actually want, they want an end-to-end workflow. They want something that they can just roll out, is trusted, has been done by others, and so that works for us. And we couldn't find anything, so we just built it. Literally, we were pissed off users that were not getting served. So what do you do when you can't get what you actually need to solve your problem? So you have people like me that are like, screw this, we're just going to build it. And I happen to work for a company that allows that. So this is what we built, OSS Review Toolkit. As I said, this is built by users, for users. It's mostly now automotive, OSPOs, but we also have some folks from the energy sector. We have some telecom. Now we get some more banking users. For instance, the Eclipse Foundation has recently decided to basically use ORT as their basically the foundation for all the supply chain, and we're now working with Finos to do the same. So again, go and fix things upstream. We built the tooling. Yes, it was originally built for enterprise users, but when we built it, we kept in mind it needs to go upstream. So we made it friendly for upstream. Then what we also did, I was like, we built the tooling, but yeah, we want a turnkey. So, why don't we just open source the data and the policies as well? So if a new OSPO comes around, here you go. You have everything you need to get started. Because literally, we don't care. For us managing these things, this is not the core IP business of all the companies involved. It's just the tooling, things that we need to get better at open source. There's no core IP in there, so we just open sourced it. We do a lot of things, and I will go quickly since I don't know how much time we left. So we do licensing checks that were originally started. Then we started doing security. And whilst we were doing this, actually all these things have common overlap. We can actually do inner source as well, and ways is working as well. What people ask me, like, what is ways working? Actually, it's very simple. You have a large company, using open source build tools, and what if you want to make sure that all the packages you build use your namespace and use your approved company license? So this is actually a major problem where there's really no tooling about. We want to make sure that, yes, we want to enable this open source, but at the end, it's an organization. You want things to work end to end. So this is where we build in mechanisms. So it's like, yeah, it's fine. You can use whatever you want. We want to enable all of the developers, but your package has to be in this namespace. Your package has to be in this internal used Git role. So that's also another problem that we fixed. We were doing migrations. And we were like, hang on, we can just program this in the tool. If people are using now the old, we're using an old Nokia system at the time, we can just add a rule and say, like, if you're using an old Nokia system, you have 90 days to migrate to our new GitLab instance. Because we were scanning their code anyways, so we knew exactly what we were about. And finally, well, the thing that I'm really now loving, software bill of materials. Because I was working in the automotive business, and we had a supply chain problem. For people that don't know how automotive or how cars are built, is a huge supply chains. And you have this kind of hamburger models where we would have a supplier to us, we would do some software, then it would be another supplier, and then we would back again. And how do you make this entire supply chain work? And I have to give credit to Endo-san from Toyota. And when I was talking to him in Japan, it's like, yeah, well, if we have some open source solution, we can make this easy. We need to have this end to end. And then we cannot force our suppliers to buy commercial tools. But yeah, if you have something good, we can always recommend them. And that's especially useful because I was I'm based in Berlin, Germany. But most people don't know that your automotive part suppliers, this might be family-run companies that have like 150 employees or sometimes even 30 employees. And that may be the company that's making the little clicker to open up your car. So it's not all big companies. There are tiny specialized suppliers that maybe don't have the resources to build an SBOM solution or build an SCA solution. It simply doesn't make sense. So if you want to get started, it's actually really simple. We have a GitHub action, and it will give you an SBOM. So simple, problem solved, easy. Yeah, not entirely. Just because a tool is capable of generating SBOM doesn't mean that it's actually of a good quality. You have to understand, and at the lowest level, we're dealing with build tools. So ORT support 20 plus different build tools. Those build tools have a lot of ways to be configured, and a lot of the data, the metadata for packages, is incorrect. So just because you can produce an SBOM doesn't mean it's a high quality SBOM. So we needed to build in mechanisms for licensing and all the metadata that basically say like, yeah, the package says that its code repository is there, but actually we know that the code repository has moved, so it's there. So why do we do this? Well, in the workflow, the thinking was very simple. We want to do licensing, security, etc. We need to resolve everything back to the corresponding source code. Because if you have the corresponding source code, we can do licensing checks. But for us also important, in the automotive business, cars are on the road for 10 plus years. If you look at the legal things, we have to have the source code for 25 years. So my successor of my successor at my previous employer still needs to have access to that. So we need to have the source code. But then I was also thinking, if we have the source code, we can do all of these open source tools. They also run often on the source code. We already have the source code. So that's all this nice benefit. So just keep in mind, just because your tool produces an SBOM, it might not be an accurate one. Going back to the inner source model, so going back to the simple diagram, I was like, all of these tools, they always are like shift left, oh yeah, cool. But they put all of this effort on the development team. I was like, oh, that's nice. Coming back from a licensing background, I can tell you what most developers know about licensing is wrong. And I don't want to burden my developers with a lot of these things. In our previous talks when I do I always compare developers and lawyers to cats and dogs. They can live in the same house, but they don't speak the same language. I don't know exactly if it's true for security folks as well, but I've been in both worlds. I can tell you that the licensing folks and the security works are maybe part of the same open source community, but they're a different type of folks. So I was just thinking, hang on, we do all this shift left. I want to enable workflow that we, as an organization, we probably use the same open source throughout all of this organization. Why don't we figure out a way that we can do this in an inner source way? So we do license clear and security clear together as an organization. And then I was like, hang on, but if we can do it inside the organization, we can also do it with the community. Wouldn't it be nice if somebody else does your license and security clearance because they already looked at the package? And it would be especially helpful if it was the upstream maintainer that says, like, actually this vulnerability is not applicable. Wouldn't that be nice? So we were looking at this, and we're like, we fixed it internally. You know what we do? When we throw a policy violation, so in order it's possible to have a policy engine, I will show it a little bit about it. You can write, this security vulnerability needs to get fixed because the vulnerability is this, or this licensing problem, you need to clear up this stuff. So I actually put up an example for the licensing one because of technical difficulties. I had to not be able to do a live demo, but I luckily had a screenshot of this. So what we do is we give instructions to our developers how to do this. And we do this in a language that the developers understand, reusing developer systems. So we don't send them off to some web server, web application where they don't know it. We just tell them, like, look, you probably know where this software package comes from. Use this little YAML file at the location and submit it via a pull request or merge request to the open source program office. We will review it and then we'll merge it. We have a complete end-to-end traceability where this curation, as we call this, comes from. And then, basically, we can merge this, and it goes to all of the other teams. In the beginning, I can tell you when we rolled this out, the developers were giving us garbage. Really, 90% was garbage. But after a while, and when we did a little bit of education and we explained to them, like, actually, this is an open source project, if there's any bugs, we are fully open source. Like, I run my OSPOs the open source way. Why? It was very simple. I, as an OSPO, need to advise my organization about open source and all my other stuff from this as well. If we're all involved in an open source project, all of my people will learn the ways of working in the open source community. Which is perfect. And now we do exactly the same. To my developers, that I need to get more developer friendly, hey, we use open source tooling to do the checks that we're legally required to do. Oh, there is a bug, we don't recognize this Python dependency. Oh, you're actually a Python expert. Can you just go to our GitHub repository, file an issue? That's the minimum I ask. Minimum, file an issue. The funny thing is, after a while, people start to learn. So what they sent to us as basically bug fixes became better and better. To in the high 90% was accurate. We got also more developers like, hey, I like this problem. You're actually not buying proprietary tooling that I always hate when my previous employer. You actually do open source stuff. And when you explain, oh, this is cool, I'm going to contribute. So slowly things get better. So I still a little bit about policy as code. So we have a public code repository where we just literally share, here you have the data, here you have the policy. And I put in a little example. So a lot of tools you can write like it's all UI and all the other stuff. For the things that we want to do, I need to take into account the product context, the code context, the license context, the security context. I have an algorithmic formula, whether it's thumbs up or thumbs down. And yeah, I'm from origin a software engineer. And the people that are working, so, okay, why? We don't want to lock down. If my lawyer or my security professional says this, I want to be able to just translate it into if and else statements. That's how we started. And then this is a little bit of, so we started writing helper functions. And that's how we come to functions like this, which is actually really, we just write a rule. And then we have these require blocks that basically say, oh, if it's a project, it means it's in the rooted project. If it's not excluded, so that actually it's shipped to the customer. If it has a vulnerability with this vulnerability score, then do that. So what we do is we do what we call this policy as code. And this enables me to do whatever my organization wants to do. I can probably write it in code. And when my developers have a question, I just basically say, well, this is our code repository, here's our policy. So they don't have to go to a 400-page wiki page. No, in the scan report, they get exactly the instructions, how they can fix their issue. And if they're like, oh, why did that violation play? They can even read the rules. It's just all code. Read the bloody code, right? That's what developers do. And then, fine enough, we're like, okay, then I was involved for SPDX Labs. Okay, so we do SPDX, CycloneDX. But our customers were like, oh, we want to do more. We want to have specific bespoke reports. Okay, we built it in. We have all of the data. So that was actually a major issue with a lot of the commercial tools. We didn't get all of the data that we need to automate and produce what we actually needed to comply with the contractual obligations that we had. Now I can. So that's it. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. Sal, how much time do we have left?
We've got 5 minutes for questions. Go for it.
5 minutes. Who has questions?
I just want to say thank you.
I'd love to hear, because you're about 5 years ahead in thinking than a lot of the OSPOs that I have to advise are. What is like one challenge, like one little nugget of wisdom that you wish you could part off to new OSPOs?
Yeah, we had a discussion there was a workshop on Friday before FOSDEM, and the one nugget we came to, please don't reinvent the wheel. There are very friendly people like me out there that publicly speak about it, and there's also a lot of OSPOs people out there. It's not easy, not difficult to find us. My email address is literally on my GitHub profile. Ask. But even I don't know everything of running an OSPO. But what I need to know, so over time when I've been doing this, I've been adding value to the community because I'm contributing back. So if I don't know something, I go to IRC, Slack, or Signal, and I say, like, this is what I need to know. And funny enough, within usually 20 minutes, I have 4 or 5 answers. Because this is how it works in the open. I contribute back, people know something, and oh, you need to talk to this person. Like, I literally have conversations with people all over the world that I would never had a chance. I actually have now lots of friends all over the world that I would never have met if I didn't do things the open source way. Now, I have to say, like, not in every organization doing things the open source way would work. I help banks, I help more highly regulated, like the government. But just for me, it's always like, yeah, it might not work 100% for you, but take elements forward, especially these filing issues. I'm organizing something called Ospology Live under the To-Do group. This is free, it's local, anybody can show up, it requires no membership, and all of the discussion are on the Chatham House rules. So literally, I created it so that anybody can just show up. Literally, I had students walking in, literally that heard about it and bought a train ticket. We had one last week in Amsterdam, and just showed up and just asked everything on those posts. Why? Because he heard about it, saw some talks, but he cannot afford to come to a conference like this. And then he heard, oh, it's in Amsterdam, it's free. So they showed up. And I'm pretty certain that he will hopefully pursue a career in open source, which is good for me. More open source is better. Open source is better for all of us. Good.
All right, thank you.
That's it.